is Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, and this is the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. We start with a verification that the meeting's been properly posted.
Yes.
Thank you. And we will begin seeking approval of the teaching and learning minutes from, my agenda is not correct, from December 3rd, from December 3rd. Do we have the right minute? The right minutes are actually attached.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, we have an opportunity for public comment. Did anyone sign up to speak tonight?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right into our content areas, and we are going to begin with continuing the discussion on the middle school science pilot.
So joining us tonight is Dee Garcia, who is the Director of Middle School Teaching and Learning, along with Erica Youst, coming back to really talk about updating on their work in the area of science at the middle school level.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will be discussing a 2-year process of coming together with our professional science teachers in the middle school area to build professional capacity and development around science practices, and then evaluating the current science curriculum and then taking on 2 piloted science resources. The pilot occurred just this fall. A team of 8 teachers across 3 middle schools engaged in the pilot and very rigorously implemented the science curricular resources, and with success they were able to come to consensus with a recommendation for tonight, which Erica is going to share.
So when we were here in the fall, we talked about we've been using iQuest as our curricular resource. This is year 9 of that resource, so we were still looking at that, and then we were looking at a couple other options. We wanted to make sure that we were fitting all of the needs for our district, not only research-based practices of what's good in science education, but also making sure that we're hitting Waukesha community needs, ensuring those in Spanish language and at the grade level literacy that we need. We went through that process and decided to move forward with Bring Science Alive through TCI. That's the resource that the group decided to recommend. It is a digital resource, and then we also have the option of classroom sets of hard copy books for our students, which we'll kind of go through as well. The features of this resource, which we really enjoyed, was it's phenomenological, which means it follows that idea of like, what is this common experience that all students are going to engage in, and then coming back to that throughout a storyline, understanding and coming to an answer to that question around that phenomena. There's options for extension for students who need it. There's options for support for students who might need more background knowledge. And there's also scaffolds for those texts and supports for the teachers to do that. They really highlight the science and engineering practices, which is something we felt was really important. And of course, it comes in Spanish language in an easy toggle, which was something that was really different from some of the other resources where you had to have 2 separate licenses or 2 separate books. This one, all students have access to both languages. So as we went through all of the resources, before we even piloted, we had them use what is called the EQUIP rubric, and it's a tool that the National Science Foundation created, and DPI also recommends you use as you look through resources. And we analyze them on their main criteria of what makes a good science resource. So we went through that before, and then as they went through that pilot, they came back after and confirmed or changed their thinking of what they thought was going to happen or what the textbook company says was going to happen, and went through that process again for all 3 of those resources. And then we came together several times throughout that fall for meetings to discuss what we were feeling and what we were seeing as evidence. And then we made that consensus conversation, and we went through a voting process. What ended up being a 6-2 decision. We knew it would never be fully unanimous. It would be wonderful it was, but we still felt that was a really good consensus. And the 2 voters who said they wanted a different resource all said they were okay with what we did. They just preferred one over the other. It wasn't that the other choice was a bad one for them. So when they went through it, there's some of the quotes that the teachers put in of what they felt was really good. They really felt that this was the most easy to navigate for both teachers and students. They had high rigor for the labs and the readings so that students could really dig more into something deeply instead of just a really shallow covering of a bunch of different pieces of information. They have an interactive notebook built in through the unit, so they can do it digitally or they can do it on paper, but it's part of the process. So it's always having them come back to that writing process. They have engineering opportunities and labs for every lesson, so it's not just once in a while the students are engaging in labs, it's consistently throughout the unit. And there are a lot of data and analysis aspects to those labs, which is a really important practice in science. Obviously, we always ask the students how they're feeling. I actually have my own child who was part of that piloting process, so I always kind of get her feeling of what she was thinking. TCI is the company that we use for our social studies, so a lot of the students said that because they already used TCI, it was a lot easier to navigate and understand. And some of the teachers who have taught social studies as well felt the same. But really, most of the student comments were they felt it was easy to use, which isn't always the case with a lot of curricular resources. They're jumping and trying to figure out where am I finding all those things, and that was their main takeaway. And as you can see, again, they're middle school students, so no one's going to be like, woo, I love this resource. But they did feel this one was a better one of what they can do. So if we move forward with this resource, this is the rough plan for professional development. The goal will be in the summer, we'll bring teachers together. TCI provides training for them where they can go through that whole process of how do you use this resource most effectively. A resource like this is a spiraling concept, so there are certain things that you need to make sure that you're doing, and if you miss it, it doesn't make sense in the storyline, so we're gonna go through that process. We'll also use those August and February PD days that are built into the calendar, assuming it's the same process as we have right now. Similar to what I'm doing in high school right now is I will embed myself in PLCs to help support as well as the building coaches to kind of provide that training. The middle school math and science coaches have been part of this process with us and learning alongside, which has been helpful, so they can help provide the support for the teachers. And another thing about TCI is they have built-in professional development that gives them little certificates if they complete them. So it's a nice way for them to continue their learning beyond just in-person or virtual training. It's built into the program as well. So as we look at cost, this is the 6-year digital access cost. Is $220,000. The 5-year would be the exact same amount, and 7 years would be $245 for that digital access. So we just put it in the middle just for now as we kind of go through and determine what our process will be for renewal cycles. This number might change when we come back for an action item. But the hardcover classroom sets, the lab equipment kits, those would stay the same no matter how long we would keep that. The idea is that we provide the main equipment for the classrooms because we want to make sure that they have all the materials that they need, and then that consumable budget stays within their building year after year within a science budget so that they can make sure they're getting the right chemicals and the right materials that they need annually through that budget. So for 6 years, we're looking just about $300,000 for all of our for Horning, Butler, and Les Paul to use that for all students 6 through 8. And that includes obviously the dual programs as well. Any questions on any of the things that we have gone over?
Questions? Ms. Kozlowski.
Just to confirm, the consumable is annual.
The consumables, not anything on here would be annual. It'd be the buildings already have a science budget that they already have a consumable budget that's annual that they handle as a building budget, not from a teaching and learning budget.
Okay. And I think science is going to be a little bit different than what I would see with like our English and our math, where you get a tangible workbook and that's basically for the phonetics and the reading and the writing and the connections of the dots. So the workbook or the laboratory kits are actually the hands-on tools.
It's the materials, like beakers and things like that, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Just want to go back to the rubric really quickly. One of the items and characteristics under the approach to phenomena says the primary goals are making sense of the world and solving problems, not covering content. I think a lot of times when we talk about curriculum, obviously, it's part of it is people marketing a curriculum. They want to make it sound really good, and that sounds really good. What does that look like in practice? How does, like, when I walk into a science classroom, how do we know that the kids are making sense of the world and solving problems? What from the curriculum is doing that in the
Yeah, so what we do is we have what's called an anchoring phenomena, which is that main initial activity that they all do. And then they have a driving question, which is
Okay.
the unit-based question. And the idea is that any activity that they're doing is coming back to that driving question throughout the unit. So they should be collecting evidence throughout the unit to get to that question.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anybody else? I know we've had a couple opportunities to talk through all of this, so as far as next steps or any further requests to review materials or anything like that, what are we doing next?
Well, one of our other topics tonight is looking at the curriculum resource timeline that we've been working on. So we'll have that conversation. Meanwhile, teaching and learning will go back and continue to look at the bigger picture of all the resource renewals. That's why Erica just mentioned that we have a 6-year quote, but we did get information for a 5-year quote as well as a 7-year quote, because as we develop and refine our timeline, we just need to look at when everything is due. So then after some of that work, then we would come back and ultimately make a final recommendation for the board to consider for action, and then potentially, following the pre-D plan, move forward with that as we roll into next year.
Okay.
One of the options that we provide to you all as a teaching and learning committee is access to the curricular resource. We would be able to provide you with digital access following today's meeting so that you'd have a month's time to peruse and investigate.
I think that would be helpful, and since it's not officially approved until it's approved by the whole board, it should probably be offered, that access should probably be offered to everyone on the board. Thank you.
We can do that.
Thanks. Wonderful. Anything else? I'm not seeing any, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to literacy, and we're going to do an Act 20 update.
Yeah, so we have members of our Act 20 task force coming forward, and this is just really part of our literacy work. Since some laws had changed, it kind of led us down a path of some work that we had already started. So Melissa Yao, Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning, I can't go forward without saying 4K through 5th grade. And Emily Freeman, the elementary literacy coordinator, are here to share an update on the work that the team has been doing. And this is, I can just out in the front just say, this has been a heavy lift, and they've done an amazing job of balancing everything, and they have a great update for you tonight.
Great, welcome.
Right, thank you. All right, so just some of this will be review, some will be new updates. But just wanted to remind you that in the district, we have put together a task force to make sure that first, we're putting kids first, and what we're doing is going to make sure that our students become better readers. And as a result of that, we will meet what the law is requiring. So we've had a team made up of people from directors, coordinators, from special education, dual language, monolingual, coaches, special education representation, making up this team who has been working on it, who's trying to make sure that we can take heavy lifts off of teachers so that they can really do the most important work of working with the children. So 2 years ago, we worked to make a literacy vision for the school district. So I just want to ground us in that, because that is what we are about when we talk about literacy. So the school district of Waukesha commits to implementing rigorous, science-aligned universal instruction and intervention systems to ensure all students become critical readers, writers, and communicators for personal, academic, and professional success. So July of 2023, the state put into effect this law known as Act 20. And basically, the law makes several changes to update literacy instruction, making sure that it is science-aligned, research science-based, so making sure that we're following what science says about reading. And the goal of it is truly to improve student success across the state. So no one can argue with that piece of it. So the law also says that you need to focus in on these 9 areas that truly make up literacy. When you say literacy, you think, oh, that's just one little area, but literacy is really comprised of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, building background knowledge, oral language development, vocabulary building, instruction in writing, in comprehension, and in fluency.
All right, so these slides probably look familiar, but we've added on the things that have happened since the last time we shared them with you. One piece of Act 20 is the curriculum requirement, and that requirement says that district curriculum must include all 9 components that Melissa just told you about. And that went into effect for the beginning of this school year. So we engaged in that curriculum review process last year, and you approved in April Benchmark Advance and Adelante, which we began our implementation of that this school year, and I'm sure we'll be back at some point with updates about that, but we're off to a great start with that. The other piece is the required professional learning requirements. And so that part of the law talks about learning for teachers and for administrators. Teachers must start their learning by July 1st, 2025. And for that, we're going to be training all of our K-5 general ed and special education teachers. We're going to be using Cox Campus, which is part of the approved list. And that training is going to begin in February at the Winter Institute. And we have plans in place to not only complete those modules, but really help teachers make connections between the theory and the information that they're learning, and then what that looks like in the curricular resources that they have in front of them. Because like Melissa said, the goal really is using that learning to impact student learning. And then for principals, they are almost done with their training. Theirs has to be completed by July 1st. They have been working through the CISA 6 early literacy leadership training. They began last summer, and they'll be completed in February. And there's been a lot of really exciting conversations that have come out of that, and their engagement in that learning has been really exciting. Another piece, and this is the piece that is quickly approaching for us, is the reading readiness assessment requirement. That is required in 4K twice a year, and in 3rd grade 3 times a year, not just 3rd grade, kindergarten through 3rd grade. The bill originally said that that was required to begin in the fall. DPI selected AimsWeb in about mid-August, and because of the late choosing of that resource, they said that the required administration didn't need to start until winter. We did train and implement in the fall because we really wanted teachers to feel prepared and have that opportunity to work out any kinks or things that didn't go smoothly. So we feel ready, and our window just opened today. Today. So we have that really paced out because, as you can see on the next slide, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. These are the screening assessments. So these are the assessments that 4K through 3rd grade are required to take, and you can also see what 4th and 5th grade are taking. That is for all students in monolingual programs, and these are the assessments for our students in dual language. This is the part that I was getting to. Diagnostic testing, then, this is written into Act 20 that any student who scores below the 25th percentile must be diagnostically tested within 10 days. And so you can see in that top box that below 25th percentile in kindergarten comes from a student's composite score from how they score on letter naming fluency and letter word sound fluency. In 1st through 3rd grade, that score comes from their oral reading fluency probe. So we have set up our schools on a staggered schedule so that teams can push in to support that diagnostic testing. 10 days is a quick turnaround, and it's 10 calendar days, so weekends count in our timeline. So we have trained our school psychologists, our literacy coaches, our principals, and some district members who will be going into the buildings to do this diagnostic testing. Then the results of that diagnostic testing is used to write personalized reading plans. And that's within 15 days of the screener. And then those plans get sent home to parents, which tell them the supports, scaffolds, and or interventions that that student will be receiving.
So to help assist us with the diagnostic assessments, when a child scores at a certain level, we analyze that first universal screener, and then looking at those results, we say, okay, where do we need to find more information? Where do we need to dig deeper, do some more assessing that's really going to help us develop that plan so we can target what the most important first need is for that child to help them progress. So for each grade level, we have a flow chart to help keep us in line of what assessments do we need to give the students. And there's 2 levels of assessment so that we can continue to really dig as deep as we can to write that plan. Then, after we have given those assessments, then we develop that intervention plan based on what is the highest level of need for the students. And then we design what the intervention will look like, what programming philosophies we're going to use, how many days, how much time, how many students will be in that group. All of that information then goes into this plan, as well as the information from the diagnostics. And then we send that information home to the parents. Those reading plans have to go home within 15 days of when the students finish that universal screener. So we have 10 days to give the diagnostic, and then they give us an additional 5 days to write the reading plans. So we have really spiffy timelines, all kind of measured out of when different communications will be going home to parents and teams working together to develop these plans to best assist the students. And after the plan is created, of course, the most important part is in implementing that plan, because that's where the magic can happen for the students. So in the plan, things that you might see are an intervention, as well as maybe some additional supports that the child might be needing. The law outlined what all needed to go into the reading plan. So we have had, prior to the state requiring us to have reading plans, we have had intervention plans for students who have been in an intervention where most all of this information we have been recording and sharing with parents. So the format looks a little bit different. There's a few additional things that are in this plan, but it's not something necessarily new to families or our system. Another big part of the reading plan is while you are doing an intervention, you want to be monitoring how that intervention is impacting the student. So the plan will also list what monitors of progress we are going to do and what the goal is for where we're trying to get the students to be able to get off the plan, but more importantly, be able to be successful with needing less supports. The state does tell us what the criteria is for exiting the plan, and as Emily had mentioned earlier, in kindergarten, it's phoneme segmentation and nonsense word fluency, so the students need to be above that 25th percentile on those 2 Ames Web measures. In first and second grade, it needs to be their oral reading fluency measure, and then in 3rd grade, it needs to be the oral reading fluency measure, as well as being proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam. So if a student in 3rd grade does not meet those measures, they would continue on a plan in 4th grade, even though the law focuses on K through 3. It does say that if a student does not get off the plan by meeting those benchmarks, they would continue to receive intervention services and have a reading plan until they meet those marks.
So our next steps are to continue our implementation of our new literacy resource and our science-aligned practices, because we know that strong universal instruction is the main key part to strengthening literacy learning. We're going to be beginning our Cox Campus training for teacher professional development. We are in process of creating our district remediation plan, which really is just an overview of all the pieces that we have in place, and then that will be posted on our district website. We are continuing to update our district website as we create new things in communication, and we also want to strengthen our parent resource section of the district website. We will start planning for summer school and resources for summer 2026, because part of Act 20 talks about the intensive summer school supports that you have in place for students who are still on a reading plan, as well as by this summer, there needs to be an updated retention policy that includes guidance for third grade students who do not exit their reading plan. And on December 30th, DPI just released their sample of what that policy could look like. So all of those things are things that are in process or very quickly coming up to be worked on.
One other piece that we just did is this presentation, we also created a voiceover for it to be shared at every building in their PTO, PTA, or other parent organizations that they have. We've also shared it at the Curriculum Council, as well as Jen shared it at our Superintendent Council meeting. So really wanting to make sure that we're getting the message out to various stakeholders with information about how we are responding and what's happening for our students here in the school district. So with that, what questions do you have?
Mr. Sylvia.
Thank you. So just to clarify it, I believe you had said that we have the rating plans we've used in the past, correct?
Intervention plans is what we call them.
The intervention plan. And we have had a diagnostic tool like this, or this is new for us?
We have had diagnostic measures that we use when to dig in further when we see that there is a child who needs some kind of intervening service to help us really pinpoint. But the law specifies in a different way some things that are required that you're guaranteed to have to do. So we might not always look at every single area because we're already able to determine, but based on the law, when it says a student is below the 25th percentile, we have to do some diagnostic testing in every single area.
And there's 13 areas.
Yeah, there's 13 areas. So there is quite a bit of diagnostic assessment that we will have the privilege of doing.
And that
the next-
assessment is more comprehensive than what it's been in the past?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Mhm.
Ms. Kozlowski.
Thank you. I want to spend a little bit of time on the couple pieces. The diagnostic testing, is that skills testing, like we're going to have someone sit with the child and they're on a computer or they're handwriting? This is verbally spending that time with the student to diagnose, correct? So
Correct.
one-on-one.
One-on-one, there are a few measures that are in small group. So the spelling test you can administer in a small group. There is, one of the assessments is a listening comprehension that is on the, well, that one is not on the computer, we wish it was. The reading comprehension is on the computer, but most of them are one-on-one with students, yes.
Okay, which leads me to my next question, which is if I take a look at, and I'm going to throw out a very raw number, and it's me really just trying to take a look at prior tests and say, so if I'm going to estimate, as of we stand right now, we're probably looking at 200 plus students that are going to qualify within this range right now.
I can give you an example from where we were at the fall. We have one, our school with the lowest amount of students who fell below the 25th was 30. We have anywhere from 30 to 104
In total.
In a building.
in a building. So we have one school who we have 30 students who we'd have to do this diagnostic testing and would have reading plans, all the way to a school that has 104 students who we have to do this diagnostic testing and having reading plans with.
Okay, so this is a big piece for depending, but either 2 or 3 times a year. How is our staffing model built to be able to take this on?
Well, one thing happened this year. We were able to increase staffing at the elementary level to have a reading coach at every school, now full-time. So that was an increase of 2 FTEs. That allowed for more coaching of universal instruction, and also allowed for 25% of their day is providing interventions to students. So that really helped at some of our schools who aren't title schools, who don't receive that additional funding, where we put it into intervention, where they have some additional intervening services on top of what teachers provide.
Okay, I will say this every time that I talk, I'm extremely concerned about this and meeting the deadlines and the structures to be able to, we're talking across the schools. If I'm going to, this is a lot of students that need an extra oomph, and I trust that as we go it will shrink, but I am concerned about having the bandwidth for the teams to be able to support this. So I'd like to have that as an action item, just as a follow-up to understand that. And I'll close with, this presentation is exceptional, and I think it was the same that I would have said the first time. The amount of detail and depth and teamwork that you guys have done to build this out and lay this out and structured is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that, and I just want to make sure that there's support and that we've got all of the tools that we have to be able to do what we need to do to lift this off the ground, because this diagnostic stuff,
And running the play. That's
Yeah.
one of the, where Emily spoke to, we have teams coming, so don't call me in the month of January. Well, you can call me. I just won't get back to you during the day, because they're going to be out in.
I live the same life in January.
Buildings,
We're good.
yeah. So, we really are, when we say all means all, we are trying to do as much as we can, and to take off as much lift from the teachers having to do all this, so that they feel like they're in partnership together, so that they can still instruct the students while we're doing some of this diagnostic assessment, because the only way that kids are going to improve is through the teacher instruction and student practice. They need the teacher there. So we are trying to take this, team approach of helping to do these things. We'll see how it goes for, this first time, and continue to make pieces, but I appreciate you asking that question about.
Okay. And then my last comment was the updates to the district website.
Yes.
I'd like to understand that a little bit more, and the reason that I ask is that I don't believe that our district website is necessarily fluently always updated and current, and we hear that many things on the website are outdated or not current and hard to find, and hard to navigate as a parent. We're a huge district. There's so much to share and talk about. But when I hear we're going to throw something else on our website, I buckle a little bit, just to say we need to make sure that the intent of what we're doing is getting in the hands of the parents and the teams that need to see this without causing another area that is not current, I guess
Yep.
is the way to say it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we do want to update what are resources for parents. In one of the few letters that parents will receive about testing does have suggestions for parents of how they can support, and it has a QR code on that letter that will link them to these options. And so we want to make it more robust. We want it to be things that parents can really do on their own, that's going to help support this child's area of need. So,
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. This was really great.
thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
Thank you. Yeah, I speaking as someone who was in a lot of those conversations when we were drafting Act 20, and it wasn't always the smoothest, prettiest process in the world, but we got there. Thank you for all the work that you are doing to implement this. We knew when we were getting this bill drafted that this part especially that Ms. Kozlowski was talking about, the personalized learning plan, the screener, the diagnostic testing, and implementing all of that was going to be a lot. On the front end, there were going to be a lot of students who fell below that 25th percentile because they hadn't been getting the proper reading instruction for a lot of their education careers. And hopefully as things go on, as we continue to do this and it continues to work out and we work out some of those problems, that number will shrink. But I know it's a lot of work, and I'm very, very grateful for the work that you two and your team are doing to implement this in our district, because it is challenging, but it's one of the most important things that we can do for our students.
Absolutely, thank you.
Mrs. Koenig?
We have the most exceptional team in this district. It's amazing what you guys have done. I'm especially excited to see the parent resources that are, that you're talking about adding to the website. And I agree with Ms. Kozlowski that our website has to be extremely user-friendly and a great resource, because you're talking 150-ish kids in a school. This is all hands on deck, and I think parents are going to have to realize that the teachers aren't going to be able to do this alone. They're going to have this cooperation, this team effort, because correct me if I'm wrong, the end game is there is a retention policy piece in there that students that aren't making a certain level, there is something in the bill that speaks to that, correct?
We have to develop that, so that will be something that we work with y'all on and
Right.
bring to you to be approved in policy of what that will be, so.
Yeah, but it is an expectation within the bill. I mean,
You get to
it's-
decide what the
Right.
details of that are, but yes, you have to have something that addresses what you will be doing and what that would look like.
So there is an end piece to this that I think, all parents should be aware of and understand too.
Yep.
It's important.
I know Eric can address that.
Yeah, the retention piece was honestly one of the more contentious things when we were doing this bill. You had some folks that wanted a strict retention. If you're not out of your personalized learning plan by the time third grade ends, you're back in third grade, and you had any varying opinions from that point all across the kind of spectrum of ideas. What we ultimately decided on was the retention piece. You mentioned it. You have the intensive summer school program, and then if you're still not tested out of it, that learning or the personalized learning plan still follows you to the next grade, even if you're out of the third grade range, which is what the focus of the bill was. But as they also pointed out, they gave some latitude to individual school districts to set what that retention policy is and what it looks like.
Well, thank you again. You're amazing.
Just a couple of things from my end, and also just to reiterate, thank you for the work that you've done, not only in preparation for walking us through what's happening tonight, but along the way, I think we've all become much more informed on what all the pieces of the curriculum are and what all the requirements are. Obviously, we have a challenge facing us in terms of the interventions that are required. I think what I'm most optimistic and excited about is that we have excellent curriculum and we have excellent teachers. So I think there's this initial hurdle where we have to address the students that have the greatest need in terms of that development piece. But I'm pretty confident that that will improve, meaning decrease, as we go, because we're starting with this exceptional and contiguous curriculum in the very early learners, right, at the kindergarten level. So I think where we're at right now reflects where we were as a district a couple years ago and why collectively as a state we've taken this action. So I can appreciate that there's a lot in front of us right now, and I very much appreciate what you and your teams and all of our individual building teams are doing to address it. I think we're in a good position to have the right materials and resources to help fix it. Related to that, I know we're already kind of addressing just the amount of work that needs to be done. I wanted to clarify, so my understanding is that we would still then do the standards-based rubrics for every student. So that work is still continuing?
Correct. We still have our ongoing classroom assessments that are happening. These are just, so the universal screener is basically our overall district assessment that we have to give. The state just tells you now what that is. And then, depending on how they do that, we do some additional diagnostic assessment. But one of the things where it talks about continuous monitoring of progress, one of those monitors of progress that we're going to be doing is from our benchmark testing that the teachers are already doing. It's that cumulative spelling assessment that they are doing. So that's one way that we are monitoring is what the student's learning, transferring, into their daily activities. So some of that we are already doing, and then doing an extra progress monitoring using Ames Web with the measure that allows us to see in a second way, are the students progressing? And then that tells us that they can, get off the plan.
And that's even more, right, from an assessments perspective. But I think what's reassuring for that is, so if we have a student who's kind of crossing that 25th percentile threshold, we still want to make sure that we're helping develop and accelerate students at every level.
Absolutely.
And so there's still some assessment tools in place that when those parent conferences are happening or when those details are going home, that parents understand, these are some,
Absolutely.
letters or parts of speech or things that are at grade level or not.
Yes. Yeah, so we have at elementary, we have a fall conference and spring conference, and then we have report cards that go home in January and June, as well as weekly communication that goes home from classroom teachers about what they're learning and opportunities for parents to ask questions and teachers reaching out about, where your child is currently at, what they're doing, what are next steps, what are celebrations.
And each 3-week unit in Universal has an end-of-unit assessment, and the results of that go home to parents as well.
With a rubric.
Yes, and show how that connects to the scores and that they'll see on the report card when that comes twice a year.
And will be continuous for grade to grade to grade to grade. So
Yes.
we don't
Yes.
have to
Yes.
wonder, how are we doing compared to last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So excited. All right. Any other questions? Well, collective thank you for all the hard work. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. We have one more discussion item tonight, and that is, we'll have Mr. Clark, our CFO, be joining us. A discussion about our curriculum review timeline and the intersection of curriculum and budget.
Yes, I'm super excited to have other partners up here talking. So welcome to Darren. Laura Ryan is also joining us to give a little bit of voice to the work that we've been doing. So tonight we are here to talk about our curriculum resource timeline. We've had some great things in place, and so tonight I just wanted to do a little bit of history and then talk about the work that we've been doing and how we are working together to plan every next step forward. So as Erica and Dee came forward and talked about the science curriculum, I couldn't help but laugh. Like, remember when we got a science book and it was the beginning of the year and you wrote your name in the very beginning? So years ago, we'd all get this textbook and write your name to see who else had the book. And at that time, curriculum directors really could choose whether to renew the book or not, and it didn't matter. And then fast forward to, okay, we're getting more organized. This middle image is of the timeline that the curriculum team has been working off of, given a process that has multiple phases that you've guys been living through these last couple of years. And then over on the right, we have ESSER funds, we have technology and digital subscriptions, and then we also have Act 20 that are really impacting the work of our timeline and planning for our resource review. So with all those things coming together, ESSER money has ran out, digital subscriptions are ongoing. You heard about science tonight. So if we were to move forward with a 6-year adoption for science, we have to plan for what happens in 6 years and what else is happening in that same 6th year. And along with the Act 20 pieces, just being realistic around our resources that we need for that. So seeing all these things come together, myself and the teaching and learning directors have spent several hours talking really about our curriculum resources, and our goal really is always to ensure that they are relevant, rigorous, and effective for our students. That's why we're here to do what we do. With that, we also had some conversation around some core curriculum pieces that we'll refer to as literacy and math, and then in addition, looking at those other subject areas, and then advanced placement. So we looked at those 3 sections of curriculum resources, and really, as a team, we wanted to prioritize that we would research or look into the curriculum resources and how our students are doing more frequently for literacy and math. Given that's a big area of push, it extends into science, that sort of thing. And so we wanted to commit to doing that more frequently, and what we came up with was every 5 years. In addition, for literacy and math, right now, as Erica came forward with middle school science, she had done high school science last year and working on that. So that might work for science, more of a staggered research and selection process and then implementation. But right now, we're doing that staggered implementation process for literacy and math. And with our district KPIs in the area of literacy and math, our recommendation moving forward is that we look at all curriculum for literacy and math together, separately for subjects, but together all K through 12 math and K through 12 literacy. We want to capitalize on as much alignment as possible. So those were 2 factors going into our work that you'll see in the timeline that we bring forward here. And then looking at the science, social studies, and other curriculum pieces, we know that we'd want to review those at anywhere from 5 to 10 years, which has typically been best practice. However, we're probably not going to do it every 5 years if we're doing literacy and math. So there's a little bit of method and madness to this planning. So ideally about 7 years. The plan that we'll bring forward is really a 10-year plan, but it has to be, it's a rolling plan, so we will always be adding on a year and adjusting and flexible based on funding and that sort of thing. So we'll walk through what it would look like. The other area of courses that we had a lot of conversation around, and really Laura, around this area is advanced placement curriculum. Sometimes, previously to this point, if it was an AP math class, we looked at the review cycle for that AP class along with other math classes. But oftentimes what may have happened is that the math for the main classes may have been very expensive, and we didn't have enough to get to the AP classes. So Laura really did a deep dive into the advanced placement curriculum that we're using currently and looking at when the last time everything was reviewed. And she can speak a little bit more to this, but the idea would be that we have our own separate timeline for AP, separate than all of the other courses. Again, we have to look at everything together, but our plan is to pull that out and look at that. That would be less frequent, more around 10 years. That's what AP is doing on their end as well. So here is our timeline, and we're first just going to talk about literacy and math with that idea of looking K-12 for each area and looking at reviewing that more frequently. And so what we'd like to do is planning ahead, knowing that some of the math that we've recently purchased is already due in 28, 29. You'll see a teal square. That would indicate that the teal would mean we're research and selecting, and it's money. And that's why Darren is here. And then once we get on track with that, we would do that every 5 years. And then with ELA, we just adopted benchmark last year. That will be coming due. And so we've planned out what this would look like. From a financial standpoint, in order to do this K-12, we're really looking at estimating about $2 million, which is very hard to swallow. but I am very confident and excited about the partnership that we have to talk about our financial strategy to get there.
So can you,
Yeah.
all right. So we've been talking about this for several months, and once I saw the initial timeline, I started thinking we need an initial investment, and I think Carrie and I at least have had conversations about jumpstarting this, and because otherwise, if you don't have that large initial investment, all that $2 million in 24, 25, or looking at the numbers of the close of 24, 25, so we'll be having this conversation later in the summer, or could be adopted as part of the final budget, was to fund that 2028, 29 adoption. And the nice thing for me in terms of fund balance and maintaining the fund balance is that $2 million doesn't go anywhere until 28, 29. So if someone were to look at our financials, we would still have a very sound fund balance during that period. But really what I wanted to do is start funding the 30, 31 and beyond with, and these are just estimated numbers, but the thought I had is every year end, hopefully we end in a positive position that we would allocate fund balance dollars, and there's different ways we can do it. We can assign it, we can commit it as a higher threshold that's the specific purpose, unless a future board votes to change the purpose. Assigning just saying these are the dollars, but that's an F&F conversation, not T&L. But we started clicking away at, okay, let's just say $500,000 a year we can add to that assigned fund balance, and we would get to the 30-31 adoption, but we would have those dollars ready and set in place by 28, 29, and that allows, takes away a lot of the guesswork. T&L can enter into those conversations and the research on what textbook we need without that worry of, how are we going to fund it? And then all of a sudden, once that's funded, we move on to 29, 30. We're putting dollars aside for the 33, 34. Now, things will come up. There'll be Act 21 or whatever. So there'll be continuous, or 22, I don't know. There'll be continuous conversations between us, because even if you look at what we did at Act 20, that came down, and I forget what the bill on that was, but $1 million is kind of in my head. We had no real way of funding that without purely looking at fund balance. But then the HVAC projects that were being paid for via ESSER were coming in under budget, and it just worked out very slick. So this isn't like we just, here's the plan, and we don't talk again on topics going forward. So what I like about this is, besides letting T&L really know these things are there to be had in those fiscal years, is if I have that time, we can plan around it and we can effectively use fund balance. A lot of districts look at fund balance as a treasure trove you never touch. We haven't done that here. I think we're in a position where we can, periodically look at Verkada, for example. You can effectively use fund balance without changing your fiscal position much. So I think this is really well laid out. Now, one thing we did agree on, that this is looking at major curriculum adoptions. We still would have to, like AP and the smaller adoptions, but at least we're taking that big, heavy lift fiscal impacts and identifying a plan. And obviously, auditors and the public love seeing us planning ahead, and just like we do for maintenance or anything else. So, and I can answer any other questions you have on the dollars, but I think I can't promise it won't be this linear, because every fiscal year is its own, plus to keep my business office license, I have to keep saying that this is just a vision. But I think we can pull it off. We're in a good position right now. I think start with that $2 million set aside, and then again, it's an annual conversation at F&F and eventually brought to the board.
We have
I see two people who are chomping at the bit to say something. Go ahead, Carrie.
I don't think I've been this giddy in a long time.
Well, we're not even done yet.
We've been talking a lot about the strategic plans and taking a look at the core investment. Our job and number one focus is education. And so obviously the first thing that we should be looking at is curriculum and making sure that we're planning for where we are today, how it's going to evolve, and making sure that the funding is available for us. And to Darren's point, because it's spoken like a true CFO, it's plans are meant to plan and things change and we don't have a crystal ball, but to lay the groundwork as to here's the roadmap of what we know is coming and that we're preparing for it and understanding all of these unknowns that happen within managing a budgeting cycle. This is what we've been talking about for quite a bit, and to get here, and I think this is outstanding. I think it's the roadmap. It starts to address other pieces. We take a look at the biggest cost, which is curriculum and infrastructure, and obviously staffing is our other piece to that, and making sure that we are investing wisely to prepare and do that. I think this is truly, I'm almost ready to do a Snoopy dance, but this is great. Thank you.
Looking to see if there's others that want to comment. This has been an ongoing conversation, so I'm really excited that we got to this point. And I think we all agree that we should never be in a point where we're making trade-offs to afford the best curriculum. And I think the last couple of years, we've prioritized getting really great curriculum, and that's been a very collaborative effort among the administration, I think the different board committees, and trying to get that timing right. I think when we started doing this, where we had a lot of self-curated content and we started putting some of these programmatic resources in place and realized, we just approved something that cost $1 million, but it's going to expire in 6 years. So we need to be prepared for what's coming after that. So I think this is an excellent first look at the strategy of how we can kind of put these pieces together. I think, so Mr. Clark mentioned AP, and I'm going to pick on that for a second, because I think that's another one that kind of like trickles in and it adds up to being a lot. So I feel like that's probably one that needs its own plan, because we approve things and it's 100,000 for this or it's 80,000 for that, and we do it a lot. So I think the whole AP program is a significant investment that the district makes, and it's good for our students because it delivers a lot of credits at the college level, and it challenges them. But it is something that we need to plan financially to be, strategically ready for that. And then looking at these numbers, just to kind of put it in perspective, I know that a majority of our expenditure is on staff and the delivery of curriculum, which is the most important thing. But we're talking about a 1% allocation of our annual expenditures. And I think we can at least do that. And I think a district of our size has the ability to do this kind of saving. If you think about any one of us as, from a household perspective, can you set aside 1 or 2% of your budget for the most important resource? Probably. So I think this is something that we need to really responsibly kind of dig in on and make sure that we have those dollars set aside for the things that are the most important.
That's the other thing that this plan does, is we're not cutting services in fall to fund this. It's what have we done, and it also brings T&L, not that they don't care about how fiscal year end, they now have some skin in the game on having a sound fiscal year end because they'll share in the savings. But I never liked the notion of we better cut, fill in the blank, whatever, to do this, when I think, there's so many, you like to end it every year with a positive fiscal fund balance, right? I mean, that's just natural, but that takes the scales of justice kind of out of it. It allows us to plan, and I think it's, the key though is having the timeline. Otherwise, we would have just started saving and assigning money without any definition or structure, so.
Yeah.
We can share a little bit. So we have a few more slides to share to go in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
That partially responds to the AP piece, but also additional money and what that would look
Okay,
like.
great. We got ahead of you.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
All good conversation. So part of the image of what you're bringing forward tonight is this graphic here where it has 4 circles on the bottom. what we did as a teaching and learning team is we looked at our current process for reviewing curriculum, and while really well intended, it's very in-depth. We have common slide decks. As we are a few years after implementing and using that, and we have staff change, some of us who are newer may have said, what does this step mean? Or, just trying to better understand. So as a teaching and learning team, we got together and we had a great work session. We all felt super powerful, like just being together and having the conversation around what does it mean to plan? What does it mean to research and select, and what would that look like? What we're trying to do here is articulate the process with clear language so that if I'm not here, it's not even that Laura can pick it up, it's that Darren can pick up and say, I know that in this year for this subject, the team is going to plan. And so what we would do is model after some of the work that has previously been done, and for each parts of this stage, or each stage of this process, we would have a set materials, so that there's some key tight and loose parameters as people go through the process. So beyond the $2 million, what you saw in the math, as far as just purchasing, we've color-coded that research and selection is that teal. So when we would purchase something, would kind of associate with some money, not green, but teal. And then we have color-coded, the plan would be gray, and then a white for the updating the curriculum, and then the yellow for implementing. And so this is just an example of what it could look like behind the scenes. We're not going to bring this to you, but I just want to give you another layer, and then I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So in this one, you can see that 28-29 is broken into we'll research and select, or AKA buy, and then we're going to update the curriculum in 1 year. And so this got our team thinking, well, wait, we can't fit everything into one box. And so as we've progressed, this is where we are now with each year has a semester. So not only are we saying this is the year we're going to buy it, we're saying as a teaching and learning team that this semester or in summer is when we're going to do what part. And for some of them, for AP, it may be all in 1 year, but for something like K-12 math, that may take 2 years, of the planning and then the research and selecting before we, even come to updating the curriculum. And so this is what I wanted to highlight is this is another level of detail behind the scenes that we're working on, but in our planning for professional development, in every part of this process, we have it each year broken down into 3 time chunks.
So as you saw on the other slide and now this one, it says this is a work in progress, and I feel like we should have like under construction signs right now, because we really are working with it in chunks. And so we really have taken a close look at the AP chunk, and we've taken a close look at the math chunk. And then we will take, and then we'll look at ELA, and then we'll look at science and all of the social studies and all of the electives. But what we're doing as we look at each chunk is that we are meeting as a director team and with our coordinators and kind of looking at historically, like, when was this last updated? If it was purchased maybe 2-3 years ago, there are parts where we now have to find, okay, when is that digital subscription up? Because that's going to force us into renewing. And do we have to maybe just renew it for another year so we can get on this 5-year cycle that Jen spoke to? Or do we want to do the whole research and select? So that's really kind of what we're doing right now. What we're finding is in AP, there is, sometimes we're forced into also reviewing, revising there. If they have, like AP Psych last month, they have changed the test, right? We have to go and do that. But there have been others that I don't think they've been looked at 15 years, like AP Lit. And then if you remember Dr. Thorpe's, book that was used, but that still needs to be updated. So we're really working with finding which courses which ones have been changed, and maybe the AP test has been changed and we didn't review or revise at that time. So again, really looking at it chunk by chunk and working with the coordinator of that department to look at what needs to be, what is on fire right now, what needs to be, and what can be extended maybe a year or two, and when are the big purchases up.
And one thing too, our team has worked on, so like if we decide, let's say 27, 28 is a research and select year for this example, the team of people doing the work have flexibility in how long that planning stage is and how long that research and select amount of time is. And so that's what we're working with, and just looking to make sure the purchasing times aren't all on the same years as we move forward.
The next slide is very specific to the secondary world. It is just some vocabulary change as we're going through this process and kind of changing a few things. We're not necessarily changing the process, but there are some vocabulary that we are streamlining, making more, I think, friendly to all people and not just educators. So we do have what we called in the past the course selection guide. If you go onto the website now, we are calling it the course catalog, and it can be found on the website under, if you hit main menu, it's actually one of the main icons. What our course catalog is really, we're starting up here with the general, and this is for everybody, so you can take a look at every course we offer, a brief description of the offer, what grade levels it's offered to. And then that's where the students and the families can go to select the courses that they want to take. General descriptions. We then offer on our website, on the teaching and learning website, what used to be course UBDs, we are now calling course outlines. If you, I think, survey educators and what UBD stands for, you're going to get a lot of different answers. You're going to get universal by design, backwards design, understanding by design. Yes. Okay, it's understanding by design, but what it really is a backwards design of curriculum, which is the process that we do use. But what we are having as our public-facing document on the website is a course outline. It begins with a brief description of the course with the major essential questions and enduring understandings and learning targets. It provides what the assessment evidence would be for that class. So anyone can go on and see that they'd be asked to do essays, and they'd be asking to do some multiple choice question assessments, or what the rubrics are in order to be assessed on those. And then unit by unit outline. What are the main topics covered in each unit? And some of the academic vocabulary that would be covered in those units for the year. So that is our public-facing document that anybody could see for our courses. Then going down to more specific is what we have our course syllabi, and that is really more class-specific, possibly teacher-specific. Those would be found on your teacher's Blackboard page. On a syllabus, you'd have things like when the teacher's prep hours are, what their grading practices are, how do they retake, remake, or make up tests, including the course outline as well, class materials, extra resources that they would use. So again, we start very general with the general description of the classes, so I can decide what I want to take, the course outline, which is the public-facing document, that's a general outline of the course, and then the very specific to the class, the course syllabus.
As we talk about these pieces, it's been super helpful to just center our language on these things, because we found that sometimes someone was saying a guide or someone was saying something else, and we're like, wait, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then this goes into the work of that whole renewal process for the work that we're doing to plan financially too. So this is just part of the work and the updating the curriculum pieces.
I should mention too, another under construction is the course outline on the website, because I am finding in that is like, for example, math, right? Agile Mind, I think we're in our third year of Agile Mind, fourth year actually of the new math curriculum. But when I went into the math part of that, they're old. They were very old. So I'm in the process of updating with them with all of the newest course outlines. but that is under construction right now.
Carrie?
That was a great point, and because my next question that I wanted to clarify before we kind of got through this is, what we're looking at here is under construction, okay? So this is not what's on the website, which leads me to my next question is, who maintains that part of the website that all of these different, because I love this, and I think our parents and our students will love this, to have that level of details and know that things are one place. Is it, I would assume it's probably twice a year at each semester that it's updated, but needing to make, my whole point on this, I love it. I want to make sure people understand that it's under construction. This is not what they see today. But then building the plan that says on the website, again, here's where it is, and the expectations on making sure that it's current. But yeah, very great.
We have the course catalog on there, and like under the menu button, it says course catalog. So we are working on those other parts. We can put a construction sign on the website and work with Mary Jo on that. In the future, I anticipate teaching and learning, myself, Stacy, others, taking over the website of teaching and learning and keeping that up to date within our own department. But right now, we're living with what we have when we partner with Mary Jo, but we want to do some visioning together as a team of how we could improve that part of the website moving forward.
The course catalog is very up-to-date. That is not under construction. We really did a lot of work on it this year, kind of looking through it, that like some of these courses have not been offered or no student has taken it in years and years and years, and those came out of the course catalog. I found that, like, for example, a very popular course at West, Trek, wasn't even in the course catalog. So we put that in there, right? Like, so the course catalog is very up-to-date. The course outlines are up-to-date. Some of the departments are completely up-to-date. Like if you look at science, I believe that is completely up-to-date now because they just rewrote them last year. And I have been able to update all of the language on those. But if you look at social studies, those are not updated yet, and we're still in the process of doing that.
So lots of exciting things on teaching and learning end. So we got Darren here tonight at Teaching and Learning. I can't thank him enough for his partnership. Our whole teaching and learning team of directors, like really putting our heads around this to find efficient ways to, really help our students in learning as we move forward. We have some next steps. We're going to continue to work on that timeline. Like Laura said, we're taking it chunk by chunk. And then we are going to spend some more time looking at our previous steps and developing what each part of the process looks like as far as plan, research, select. And then we're going to continue our collaboration with teaching and learning coordinators, but also cabinet and the business office as we work to define this timeline, but also know that we may have to be flexible at any given year, but that's where we feel really good about where we're at and what we're planning for.
This is a big part of strategic planning that we don't always talk about, right? We talk about the facilities things and staffing things, but this is significant. And I know this is coming, so we have a couple policies out there that probably need to be updated with the new language when we're ready to operate under that new vocabulary. So I assume we'll be taking those along with other things, along with the plan about what comes to the board or to the committee when we're talking about either renewing something or reconsidering something.
Yep, that's still part of our work in progress pieces. And then, yes, the review of the policies, because that's where we ourselves were fumbling a little bit at times around, well, it says this guide should be approved, but it's just having a common understanding. So it's still a work in progress, but we'll bring those forward.
This will be great to have it all cleaned up. So, anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Are there any recommendations for future committee topics? Not seeing any at this time. Our next meeting is Tuesday, February 4th at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom. We're adjourned for tonight. Good night, everyone.